All right, so I'd like to have everyone's attention. We're going to start. I want to be cognizant of the fact that we said the meeting would start at 6:30. So first and foremost, thank you all for being here. I'd like to thank you all for being here and for being part of this public hearing tonight. I'm Scott Avenison. I'm the CEO of the Rhode Island Public Transit Authority. This is our fourth public hearing on the proposed Dorrance Street Transit Center. A couple of housekeeping ideas and announcements. RIPTA is consistently under the FTA guideline on mask mandating, so you'll see a lot of the RIPTA staff. We're used to having to wear them all day in all of our buildings and on our buses. So if you feel comfortable with the mask, wear the mask. If you feel comfortable without the mask, don't feel one way or the other. Do what is more comfortable and more preferable to you. In a few minutes, I'm going to turn it over to Greg Nordin, who's our Director of Strategic Advancement, who will walk everyone through the slide deck, and then we'll take questions and try to answer those questions. But I thought I'd give you a little perspective of where we are and where we started and how we got to where we are now. So most of you will remember that several years ago, the voters of Rhode Island passed a $35 million bond issue related to the creation of transit hubs throughout the state. That morphed into what could have been, or what was proposed at that point, to be an underground train station, bus hub at the base of the State House, encompassing part of the State House lawn. And that proposal went on for several years as they started looking at different options, what worked, what didn't work, what was good, what was bad. And that project was deemed to be unaffordable after all the proposals had been received. At that point, it shifted to look at a transit hub that would consist of improvements to Providence Station and the Amtrak station, improvements in changes in Kennedy Plaza, and the creation of a new multi-hub system that I think would be right over there. There was severe backlash against the piece of property because it was really too small for the amount of things that people wanted to have accomplished on that piece of property. And it just kind of went on for about a year and a half or so of looking at the site, what worked, what didn't work, what was possible, what wasn't possible. And then the new governor came into office and he met with a bunch of us and said, I'm hearing a lot of concerns about the site on Dyer Street. I'd like to rethink that and look at some other options, and that's how we got to where we are today. That would be changes at Providence Station, changes in Kennedy Plaza, and this the piece of property here on Dorrance Street. So a little bit of history as to how we got to where we are. And as I said, this is our fourth public hearing to have people look at what the possibilities are, give suggestions, tell us what they like, tell us what they don't like, so that we can then try to incorporate all of that into the next iteration. And with that, I'll turn it over to Greg. Scott.
Take this off to present. We'll start with the microphone just in case. So my name is Greg Nordin. I'm RIPTA's Chief of Strategic Advancement. I oversee the agency's planning, marketing, customer service, and project management functions. Been with the agency for a little over 10 years. We have a whole bunch of RIPTA team members here today to support. So we've got Ed Brown, our Director of Service Planning and Scheduling, our Principal Service Planner, Greg Harris, and then Zach Agish, who is our Capital Planner. And then we have a few folks from our marketing team, Christy Raposo here, manning the laptop, and then a couple, there's Joelle and a couple other folks. But if you have questions after we're done here and you want to talk to some of the RIPTA staff one-on-one, they're a really good resource and should be able to help you out. If not, we're really good about getting answers and getting back to people. So if you leave here tonight with an unsatisfactory question, we will do our best to get back to you. So we're here today to talk about a new transit center at Providence Station. Or I'm sorry, not at Providence. This is a little different when you're not on Zoom, by the way. This is the fourth time and we're in person, so it's a little bit, the stakes are a little higher today. But I'm really glad to be here today. We're here to talk about a new transit center, actually at the corner of Dorrance and Dyer, located just on the other side of the new Aloft Hotel. And this is really meant to be the first step in a process that we're going to be on a journey that we're going to be taking to develop this new transit center. And we're just here today to get as much feedback as we can from our passengers, as well as to give you all as much information as we have so that the process is as transparent and open as possible. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're keeping our riders happy and moving forward in a way that's inclusive of all the stakeholder voices that are a part of the project. So today we're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to start with the background about sort of how we got to this moment. Scott gave you a brief recap there. There's a couple other things I want to throw in for context. We're going to talk about what we're trying to accomplish. Take the project off the table. What goals do we have for our transit system? What are we trying to do for our passengers? Then we're going to talk a little bit about the specifics of this particular proposal, why we think it's a good one. And then we're going to get into the next steps, which are really going to be focused on sort of what are the things that we're going to be doing directly after these meetings end. And then I'm going to open up to questions and answers. I think Joelle has already been taking down a list of people who want to offer comment, but it's an open meeting, so if you didn't sign up and you hear something today, they're like, hey, I really want to understand this better, or I think this is a great idea or a terrible idea, raise your hand. We'll get to you. So a little bit of background about how we got to this moment. As Scott mentioned, back in 2014, Rhode Island voters voted for a bond referendum voted for a bond for $35 million for transit infrastructure. And that was really focused on improving transit infrastructure around the state. But the clear focus of what we're trying to do is Kennedy Plaza and downtown Providence, and really improving transit in the capital city. Several iterations of this project have progressed over the years, but none of them have really gotten past a conceptual phase. There's always been some sort of fatal flaw. There's always been some bigger issue that's been underlying those projects. Since 2014, though, we think a lot of things have changed in the state, and we're not in the same place we were 8 years ago. So first and foremost, we adopted a vision for our agency about where we're going over the next 20 years. It's called Transit Forward Rhode Island 2040. It's a 20-year plan looking at how we're growing our system. It's a really big plan. It's thinking about bringing in more buses, more frequency, later night service, weekend service. It's talking about bringing in new modes of transit so that maybe there's places in the state where it makes sense that we want to switch out buses for rail because there's enough people that can support a rail investment. And then it's also a capital program. So it's looking at things like where do we need new hub infrastructure? Where do we need to make investments in actual built environment to make our system a better operating system? Beyond that, we're also right now working on a plan to fully electrify our fleet. Our board of directors this past Wednesday just approved a project called the Action Plan for Service Growth and Electrification. And this is our guidebook to taking this vision that we've developed with Transit Forward, and it's going to take that vision and turn it into a nuts and bolts program of work that says, okay, RIPTA, this year you're going to buy this many buses, and in this year you're going to buy this many buses, and you're going to build a charging station here and do all these fun things to get us to that 20-year goal. That's kicking off in the next couple of weeks. We're also in the process of developing several hubs around the state per the recommendations out of the Transit Master Plan. The newest one that's going to be opening is going to be in Pawtucket, co-located with the new rail platform that's opening up there later this year. We also have a hub in development in Warwick at the CCRI campus, and we have grant funding to proceed with a hub on the campus of the University of Rhode Island down in South Kingstown. And what this really boils down to for us is that we've learned is that at the end of the day, our riders need a hub that is going and need a transit system that's going to keep pace with where we're going. And this is a time of growth for this agency. We want to expand our footprint and do more and offer better transit service. And we need a transit center that reflects that. So you might ask, well, why does RIPTA need a new transit center at all? Why is Kennedy Plaza not good enough at this point? And like I said initially, we're a growing agency. Transit Forward Rhode Island 2040 has set a very clear vision for us to grow. You might have noticed if you're a frequent rider now, We've extended late night service on probably 10 routes in the past year. We've added weekend service, 7-day-a-week service on Route 14. Route 58's gotten some investment. There's a lot of investment we're making in our routes, and there's only so much that we can do within the confines of Kennedy Plaza today. This upcoming service change in June, we've announced public hearings for those service changes. They're largely positive changes again. It's more bus routes. Route 16 is a new route that we're going to be running that's going to go from CCRI down to Quonset along Bald Hill Road. We have a new service starting in Newport. All kinds of stuff that's happening to grow our system, and we need a transit center that's going to keep pace with that and give us the space to make those types of investments. Kennedy Plaza is a huge space though, but if you really look at Kennedy Plaza, it's actually not a space that's particularly well designed for a transit center. If you're somebody who gets off a bus at the B berth and you happen to have a transfer that's taking you to the Z berth or the X berth, you have a good 500 and something foot walk to get there, and it's not a straight line. You're crossing Washington Street, you're going through Burnside Park, which is not set up to be a transit center, so you've got a lot of windy paths. You're going uphill part of the way. It's not a particularly great environment for a transit center. Yes, it's big, but it doesn't actually have a lot of usable transit space. And the reality is that this space is trying to compete to do too many things. It's a great civic center and a great park, but when you add in a transit center, it makes it very difficult to make improvements that are beneficial to both of those uses. And then quite frankly, it's just not a transit center that gives our passengers what we think they deserve. At the end of the day, riding transit should be easy. Our passengers shouldn't have to worry about climbing uphill to get to a bus stop to make a transfer. We want to create a transit system that makes transferring easy and simple and protected from the elements. And that is not something we can have at Kennedy Plaza. So the goals. So our goals in this project are pretty straightforward. Oh, all 7 are there. This is not a PDF. Where's the PDF? Max. All right, so the 7 goals. There was a grand reveal here where you're going to see one at a time, but that got lost. That's all right. So the goals for this project are pretty straightforward. The first thing we want to, by the way, I just want to let everyone know, I know I see a few people taking photos of the slides. That's great. This is all available on our website. So if you, in fact, I think it's the exact PowerPoint you've given the first time. So if you are interested in the slides.
Not exactly. It's not exactly the same PowerPoint that was presented
at the
virtual meeting.
Okay.
It was not.
Okay. This is the PowerPoint that's up there, so if you have questions, you can feel free to go to, or you are interested in a slide, they're all available on our website. Additionally, yeah, that's all there. And there's also, if you're interested in, I say something that you miss, we have a recording up there from the first meeting as well, so I'm trying to keep this as consistent as possible. So the first goal that we have for this is that we want to create a transit center that is putting the needs of our passengers first, making transferring easier, prioritizing safety and security, improving passenger amenities, including things like more benches, better restroom access, expanded customer service opportunities, and better real-time arrival information. Right now, as I said, we're in a space that's essentially competing with other uses. You've got a skating rink, you've got public parks, you've got a beer garden, you've got all this great stuff going on, and a transit center. And it's very hard to say transit passengers first because you have all these competing interests that are going on. We want to create a transit center that puts the passenger's experience above everything else. So if you are somebody who's coming into downtown Providence to make a transfer or connection to a bus route, we are putting your ease of use of the system above the other uses. That is the primary goal we are trying to accomplish here. The second goal is we want to improve operational efficiency. We don't want to put something out that's going to cost more money for us to operate the same level of service today. So, one of the failings that we've seen in previous iterations was that buses were doing all kinds of crazy movements in downtown, and it was going to cost a lot of money to run service because the buses were doing a lot of things. That doesn't work for us, it doesn't work for our passengers because it makes for longer travel times. So we want to make sure that this is operationally efficient so that people can get in and out of the city as quickly as possible if they're just transferring. We also want to create a space that can be managed easily. And what I mean by this is, again, going back to the idea that there's all these competing interests. How do we determine who is a bus rider versus somebody just hanging out in the park? And we want to make sure that we can create a space that is manageable so that when there are those occasional issues that come up that need to be managed, we have the right staff in place to deal with that, and we don't have to ask those questions of, well, is this a transit passenger or somebody else? We want it to remain centrally located. We don't want to find a transit system or transit center that's been moved out of the core of downtown. We think that the location over here at the intersection of Dorrance and Dyer is a great one because it is very close to downtown Providence. It's a short walk from Kennedy Plaza, but it also is it's still a very central location to all the awesome activity that's happened down here. This building wasn't standing here 3 years ago. The new hotel that's just opened, the great new park, the new bridge, the DTC corridor, there's all this stuff that's happening in this area. We want to make sure that we're a part of that. We also want to make sure that we find a spot that can accommodate our growth as an agency. Since we know that we're growing, why would we want to build a transit center that we're going to outgrow in a year or two? We're trying to avoid that. And quite frankly, as I've said before about Kennedy Plaza, we do not have confidence that we can grow there in the long term because of all the space constraints. And then we want to make sure that whatever we're doing, we're supporting the state's economy. We're continuing to give people the jobs. We're continuing to make sure that people have access to the rest of the state and that we're keeping the state moving forward. And then the last goal, and probably the most important, and this is really kind of a reiteration of the first goal, is we just want to create a transit experience that makes people's lives easier and more enjoyable. Transit shouldn't be a burden. It should be easy to use, and we want to make sure that our system reflects that. So what is the Dorrance Street Transit Center? This is going to be a mixed-use development that's going to include a few things. Transit center, some ground level retail, administrative offices, housing, and parking. And we did delete the word workforce from housing, so that would be the change we made to the PowerPoint, but it otherwise is the same presentation. Where is this going to be located? We envision it as being located on the blocks that are bounded by Dorrance Street, Friendship Street, Clifford Street, and Dyer Street. So if you're familiar, again, it's just right over here on the other side of the Olof building, Olof Hotel, across the street from the courthouse. This is a diagrammatic map showing kind of its relation to the other transit investments. We have Providence Station in the north. We have Kennedy Plaza kind of in the middle there. And then we have Dorrance Street that's kind of just south of those. And this is not going to do what I want it to because we're now a PDF. So this was going to show, so this is actually a map that shows them in a slightly different angle, and I apologize. Let me see if this has a laser pointer on it. It does. So we've got Providence Station here, Kennedy Plaza, and then the Dorrance Street Station, sorry, I'm looking at this in a weird way, is right here. And what these three things have connecting them is the downtown transit connector, which is a high-frequency service that we started a little over a year ago that provides 5-minute frequency through downtown. You see the bus lanes right here. The new shelters that are just outside of the building, those are part of the downtown transit connector. And the point of this is that it's meant to, we have very good connectivity between these three locations. So yes, this is a little bit further away from the train station, but if you're somebody who is transferring to the train station or want to get to the transit center, it's a very short, quick ride on the DTC corridor to do that, and they're linked together on this spine. So all three of these investments, the train station, Kennedy Plaza, and the Dorrance Street Transit Center, are linked by the downtown transit connector, which was important for us. So why is this location preferable? We didn't just pick it out of a hat and say, this is our new spot. There was an actual process that went into figuring out why this location was so important to us. So it's important because it has great proximity to the core of downtown. It does account for growth in the jewelry district, but if you are somebody who is going to a destination on Waybosset Street or Westminster, this is really no further than a walk from Kennedy Plaza to those locations. It's also got great proximity to the downtown transit connector, meaning that people are connected with transit through all these locations, and this provides great connectivity down to Rhode Island Hospital as well. This is actually one of the few parcels in downtown Providence that actually has space to develop a transit center as well. If you think about downtown Providence, there are locations where there are large surface lots, but they're not really in great locations. Victory Plating to the south was in the conversation for a while, which is down near Rhode Island Hospital. We didn't want to take our passengers down to Victory Plating because, number one, it was expensive, and number two, no one's going there. So we wanted to make sure that we were picking a location that had enough space for growth, but also was accommodating our passengers' needs. And then the advantage of this as well is that because it's proximity to Memorial Boulevard, buses that are not necessarily serving downtown directly, but are just moving people out to the suburbs, there are express routes, the the 9X, the 10X, the 24L. This gets them in and out of the city quickly because you can just use Memorial Boulevard essentially to get over to 95 and 195 and Route 6, and it gets you out of downtown quickly without adding to congestion on city streets. So this is a preliminary rendering of what we're thinking about for this. I should stay, and I meant to lead with this up from the start. This is still a very preliminary conversation, right? So there is a lot of opportunity here for people who are interested in the project to get involved, to make sure that their voice is heard, to yield a better outcome. So when I'm showing this rendering, this is not the building that's getting built tomorrow. We'll probably go through 10 iterations of this, but it's just here to give you some sense of what we're thinking about will work. So you'll see here a few different things. You'll see in the conversion to PDF it got a little distorted, but on the ground floor you'll see that we have our transit center that's kind of on the Clifford Street side. And then on fronting Dorrance Street you'll see that this is where we would have planned retail. So this might be transit supportive retail like a coffee shop, maybe a dry cleaner, maybe a little cafe, I don't know, something like that. But it's really meant to add to the transit user experience. It's not meant to necessarily be something that's gonna make it harder to use transit. Above that, you'll see that this is where we've planned the idea that we would have some sort of housing. There might be some administrative offices up there for RIPTA, but by and large, this will be open for housing. And then behind that, we've proposed parking. And that parking is really to offset the parking that's in the lot today. I can get into more detail about that, but yes. This is an aerial shot of the same, This is an aerial shot of the same facility from above, running up and down on your screen here. That would be Dorrance Street, and the diagonal street, that's Dyer Street, which will turn into Memorial as it goes around. You'll see here we have room for 15 bus berths. This would accommodate all of our traffic, bus traffic within the facility. And then we have, so this would be the aerial footprint. The amenities that we're going to provide for our passengers, and I say hope, and I want to retract that word hope because we're already going on the record and committing that we will have these amenities for our passengers. You're going to have better restroom facilities than we've offered at Kennedy Plaza in the past. You're going to have better interior waiting space where if you have a longer transfer, you're not all huddled around in that front vestibule area like a KP, but an actual facility where people can sit and wait for a bus. We're going to have an expanded customer service center, and what I mean by that is today there's a window. That window may be there, but we're also going to have the opportunity where people are re-enrolling in programs or they have broader questions about RIPTA. There's going to be an opportunity for them to interact with a RIPTA staff person one-on-one. We're going to include ticket vending machines, so if you are wanting to add funds to your Wave card, you'll have an opportunity to do that. Ticket vending machines is an old term. We're not using tickets anymore, but this would be a Wave vending machine, I should say. We're also going to invest in higher quality digital screens and more plentiful digital screens to make sure that people's information about their travel time and their bus arrivals and departure is made much more clear than it is today in Kennedy Plaza. We've got the old LED diode things in our shelters, which were great when we built them, but technology's evolved and we want to put in nicer amenities for our passengers. And then last but not least, we want to make sure again that it's a friendly place and we want to include public art as a key feature to this. Some things that we are going to be including as well, this has not been updated, but we have already committed that we're going to do this. We're going to have bicycle repair and maintenance stations, so people are commuting in by a bike and they want to transfer to RIPTA, they'll have a spot to fill up their tire or address minor bike issues. We're going to be working towards that transit supportive retail, and then we're also going to be committing that we have space downtown for community events, public meetings, making sure that it's a transit center that if we have a nighttime event and people want to come out and tell us about their transit experience, we have a space to do that that's centrally located and on transit. If you have suggestions for other amenities, we've gotten some great ones so far. We're throwing them into the pile and we're going to see what sifts through. And I know there's some questions about quiet rooms or opportunities for lactation stations. We're certainly folding those into the mix. I can't promise on those just yet, but we are folding them into the mix and we're going to see how this shakes out into the spaces available. From an operational standpoint, some of the features we're hoping to get out of this project, the big one is shorter distances between transfers with no exposure to the weather. So if you're a regular rider of RIPTA and it's a rainy day and you gotta go to Kennedy Plaza to transfer, I hope you have an umbrella because you're probably gonna get wet. In this facility, that's gonna be a thing of the past for us. So if you have a transfer, you're gonna be able to do that easily indoors. You're not gonna have to go outdoors to do so, and you'll be able to stay dry, and you'll be able to stay, presentable. So wherever you're going, you're not a big wet puddle, which nobody enjoys. And then beyond that, the distances are going to be shorter. So again, if you're somebody who doesn't necessarily want to hike from the B berth to the Z berth, you won't have to do that anymore. It's just going to be a shorter transfer distance. We also are confident that this project has enough boarding areas that we can accommodate all of the growth we're anticipating in the Transit Forward Rhode Island 2040 plan. I know it seems like a lot that we're asking to fit into 15 berth structure, but we are confident that we can do that. Then this also, again, it just provides a really seamless connection. So if you're somebody who is going here, but you're actually trying to get to the train station, or you're trying to get to Rhode Island Hospital, you're gonna have a great connection on the downtown transit connector. We're gonna have 5-minute frequency service to Kennedy Plaza. For people who are still going to the KP area, it's a simple transfer and you'll be there in 3 minutes. So a little more detail on sort of the floor plan of the building. We anticipate there will be 15 covered berths. Interior RIPTA services, retail and dining. On the upper floors, you're going to see, I forgot the word workforce, we're getting rid of that word, but we were going to have housing, administrative offices, and a parking garage. You'll see here, we've planned, and this again is very conceptual. I would not take this to the bank that this is exactly what it's going to look like, but this is, again, meant to be representative of what we're trying to accomplish. We have customer service on the customer service station. We have restroom access, waiting areas, and then the wave vending machines. So the big thing that I know everyone probably has a lot of questions about is, well, what is this going to do to my service? And we have been doing a lot of work on the service side. Our service planner, Greg, our principal service planner, Greg, has been putting a lot of effort into this. And I'm not going to go into a ton of detail right now, but I will say that through this process, we're going to continue to engage with our passengers and make sure that we're taking feedback about service. But I will say at a high level, there's some things we can already sort of frame out. Number one, Memorial Boulevard and Dorrance Street are going to become more important to our day-to-day operations. You're going to see a lot more bus traffic on those roads. Every single transfer that is possible today at Kennedy Plaza will be maintained at the new location. We're not asking people to now start transferring at a different location for some routes, and other routes connect at other places. Every single bus that goes to Kennedy Plaza where you can make a transfer today will be available at the new location. And we also are predicting right now that our impacts to travel times will be overall fairly minimal. So you might see a couple of routes that have a minute or two added here or there, but on the flip side of that, you're going to see other routes that have time removed because it's more efficient for those routes. But on the whole, we think it's going to be a wash in terms of the travel time impacts. Following up with today's meeting, actually, we already have some proposed routing available. If you go to ripta.com/transit center, the routing that we've been starting to preliminarily develop is available. I would encourage you all to go check that out. If you've got questions, reach out to one of us. We're going to be happy to answer those questions. Whatever we do with routing, and it's a long ways before we finalize that completely, that's actually one of the last things that will happen, is we're going to make sure that anything we're doing is in full accordance with federal and state laws. So we're going to be doing making sure that we're assessing these things so that if we're having negative impacts on an overburdened community, we're going to figure out ways to mitigate that and make that impact less so. But I will tell you, again, I'm very confident on this that these impacts are relatively minor because the travel time is sort of a wash. So what does this mean for other investments that we've made in transit already? A few things. So for Providence Station, we're going to continue to have incredibly frequent service to Providence Station. If you actually are going to Providence Station on a regular basis today, you probably already know this and you use RIPTA. We have service to Providence Station every 1 to 2 minutes already. It's just not particularly well signed. So we have routes 55, 50, 56, 57, the R line, all 7 routes that serve the downtown transit connector. They're all going to the train station today. They're going to continue going to the train station when this new center opens. In fact, some of them are going to get more direct. The R line is going to use we're proposing we use Memorial Boulevard rather than kind of winding through city streets, so we have a more direct connection. The R line is going to have the DTC will have the bus lanes that will take you there as well. We're going to continue to have incredibly frequent service there. RIPTA is currently working on a project to make upgrades to the building. The building is looking kind of rough for its age, and they're actually getting ready to move ahead on that now. And that's going to include improvements for our passengers, including a separate waiting area for transit passengers that's closer to the bus stop, so people have a space if they are going there and they're waiting for transit and they don't want to wait out at the shelter, they can wait indoors. And that is actually, I believe, scheduled to be advertised for construction this upcoming spring. For Kennedy Plaza, we're going to continue serving KP. Not every route that goes there today is going to keep going there, but you're going to have incredibly frequent service going to Kennedy Plaza. The downtown transit connector alone, you're going to have 5-minute service going to Kennedy Plaza. So in the time that we've been in this meeting, which has been 35 minutes, you will have had 7 vehicles that will have taken you to Kennedy Plaza from the transit center. And you'll have 7 vehicles that would have taken you back. But we're going to continue making sure that we're coordinating with the city of Providence to make sure that Kennedy Plaza remains an important piece of the transit infrastructure in the city. They've already committed that they're going to accommodate space for our buses as they move ahead with their vision for Kennedy Plaza. As this project develops and as the city's projects develops, our intention is that we do not want to have to displace our passengers multiple times through this process. We don't want to have to close Kennedy Plaza to then send everyone up to Fountain and Exchange Terrace. We did that in 2014, and that was not a fun process for anybody. So we're going to be working with the city to make sure that there is continuity of service throughout both of the changes that are occurring, both at Kennedy Plaza for the city's vision and with this facility. So next steps for us, we're going to be working with DOT on a public-private partnership in the development of the project. And this is a structure that's a little unique for us as a state. I don't think we've done many of these. And this structure is going to be important because it's going to ensure the long-term viability of the project. One thing I can't, and maybe I haven't done a great job in the other presentations of really clearly explaining why P3 is so important to this project. We're a transit agency, and if you notice in the presentation, I said a lot of things about housing and retail. We don't necessarily want to become landlords and managing retail spaces for people. We want to run more buses. So by entering into a P3, we're going to bring on a private developer who's going to work with us to make sure that they're delivering a transit center to the standards we specify, but also giving them the opportunity to be the landlord and to do those things because they're better suited to do that. The other advantage for this is we can actually, and we're going to be making sure that our day-to-day operations of that center are going to be done in a way that really respects our passengers and makes sure the space is clean and well maintained and all the lights are functioning. And so this P3 development, it's something I've glossed over in the past, but it's a really important part to how we deliver this project and why it's different than Kennedy Plaza today. We expect that this project is going to take, I will say conservatively, 3 years at this point, because we are looking at a more complex procurement method. It's going to take time to build that. It doesn't happen overnight. But until then, we're going to be in KP. We're going to have some minor detours while the city is undergoing some of their work this upcoming summer, but we anticipate that we will be in Kennedy Plaza until this new facility opens. And we're going to continue engaging people throughout this process. I know we've framed this as the 4th public meeting, but this is the 4th public meeting and many public meetings to come. One thing I will also make sure that I will commit to, and this is a change from the other presentations, we're committing that we're going to have a rider advisory panel on the development of this so that we actually have our riders' feedback as part of the project. It's not just we're going to engage you and then go do our thing. We're going to make sure that we have a rider advisory panel that is informing us throughout this process so that we're getting it right and reflecting the needs of our riders. So I see people writing that down. I'm on camera. I'm saying it in a microphone. We're going to do it.
How much power are you going to have?
How much power?
Yeah.
Well, you're sitting at the table, so.
Sitting at the table don't mean anything. You sit at the table and not have any power.
Okay. I mean, at some point, like, we're doing our best here to empower our riders and put you guys front and center so that you're making the decisions.
But are you gonna listen? We can make all the decisions in the world, but if you don't listen, it's no good.
Well, the only thing I can do
There's
is,
a public proposal for this and you didn't listen.
we're standing here right now because of public feedback. We're listening.
Okay.
So feedback from today's meeting will be processed no later than the end of this month. Everything that we've received from passengers so far is going up on our website. So if you've got questions, we're putting them up on the website and answering there so they're publicly answered. We're going to continue accepting public comment. We say through March 31st, but really honestly, this is an open door. Just keep throwing stuff at us. Any feedback we get, we're going to be very clear. If we can't incorporate it, why we can't incorporate it. But we're going to do our best to incorporate everything we can. You know, we live in a world where we can't all have everything all the time, but we're going to do our best to make sure that we're taking the feedback we get from our passengers and we're delivering on that. And if we can't, we will be clear about that and transparent about why that is the case. Dwayne, did you have a question?
I just want to be clear to clarify this Buchanan's comments. You talk about that advisory group, that's basically going to be advice, not for the there will be no decision-making capability of that, correct?
You're asking me a question I don't have an answer for.
Okay.
But I'm saying that in the normal development of a project, we take feedback and then we go do our thing. And we come back and say, here's how we've incorporated it. We're changing this process so that people who are interested and want to actually be a part of that process will have an avenue to be regularly consulted and advise on this project. At the end of the day, like, it is an advisor, I mean, yes, it's advisory, but again, I'm going on record and saying into a microphone, on camera, multiple ones, we're going to do our best to make sure that if we are unable to do that, we are absolutely transparent about why that is. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to build a better transit system for our passengers, and the only way we're going to do that is by listening to them. But that is there's a reality as well. There's financial things and all sorts of things that are bigger than just giving everybody what they want all the time. But we're going to do our best.
Can I ask you guys, see me what you want all the time?
My name is Jeremy, by the way. I have a question, a few questions, and I don't mean to interrupt, but this is a great presentation, and I
Yep.
feel much more, I feel a little bit more clear on what's going on. My question is, number one, who are the partners that you are considering? Has that gone into the general public partnership meeting, the P3 that you just talked about? Who are going to be the partners with the city that are going to be
Developing this?
the new landlords for?
So that is a procurement process we have to go through. So I can't just pick developer A off of a shelf and say, you're our developer. Because we're using government dollars, you have to go through a process that's an open and fair and competitive process. And so the way that works is we essentially will gauge interest. We'll do what's called an RFI, a request for information. Put that out there and say, if you're interested in this project, let us know. And then all these developers will come back with their preliminary teams and say, we're interested, give us more information. And then the second step that is doing what's called a request for proposals and RFP process. We say, great, here's the project, here's all the parameters around it, here's everything we need. We need to know that on Tuesday nights, the lights get turned off at 2 a.m., but on Wednesdays, we run extra late till 3 a.m., so that, we put all that together, and then they submit a proposal, and then that's evaluated. That proposal is evaluated looking at a whole slew of factors, including the availability of the space, their overall cost, all sorts of things. But it's a competitive procurement. We don't get to just choose whoever we want.
Okay, the next question was, you said that the timing, that it was going to really not affect the timing, moving people, but we cannot predict the traffic delays. We've got about $2.5 billion over the next 5 years that have been used in the state of Rhode Island to fix infrastructure and roads. And right now, if you were to take a bus from Kennedy Plaza to the corner of East Bay, it would take you almost an hour because of the traffic delays now with the Washington Bridge and all those other things.
Yes.
So have you correlated that in the projections of the time that it's going to take for people to get around the state with all the new infrastructure dollars that are coming in and all the 170 roads that are being constructed?
Yeah, no, so when I talk about the impacts, I'm specifically talking about what's happening at the plaza. I hear you about there's a really aggressive program of work right now that's being led by DOT to rebuild many of the state's bridges, and that is having a huge impact on everybody, including our buses. That is something that is frankly beyond our control. The bridges have to be upgraded and brought into a state of good repair. We are doing our best to make sure that we're coordinating with DOT. We are making adjustments to our schedules for some of the delays that are turning out to be longer delays, and making sure that we are essentially, yes, accommodating that there is some level of impact that is out of our control. When I am specifically referring to, though, in Kennedy Plaza, when that as this project progresses and the city's work progresses, we're going to be working in lockstep with the city to make sure that the impacts are as mitigated and minimal as possible to our passengers.
My last question, thank you. My last question was $12.5 million was sent in from Mr. Reed. We know that we have to match that at least by 1/4, so we got to put up at least $3 million. This building, it looks like it's going to cost about $40 million. Do you know the exact cost of what it's going to cost the taxpayers?
Yes, I don't know entirely what you're referring to with the
12.5 million dollars is what you said that's what the congressional seat brought in.
That's what for Providence Station.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. That was specifically for Providence Station. Again, that's a DOT-led project to make upgrades to the train station. This project right now, the state has $35 million in bond funds that were passed in 2014. That $35 million does not cover the full cost of what we're talking about right now. This is where the public-private partnership also comes in handy, because part of that is we can leverage investment from the private sector and say, if you make this investment with us, there will be a return for you in the long term. So things like the retail, revenues from parking, rents from the apartments, those are things that they can realize as revenue that will offset their initial investment into this project. So we have $35 million right now. We don't anticipate on bringing in additional resources, but leveraging this for a public-private partnership, which is a commonly accepted model at this point in development. This is not something we've done a lot of in Rhode Island, but there are many projects occurring around the country where they're using public-private partnership to develop things, because it's quite frankly a way for the private sector to make the investment on a public good and realize some revenue from that.
Because I was just thinking.
So, all right, I appreciate that, sir. I appreciate your questions, and I'll get to you. We got a whole room full of people, and there are people that have signed up, and I'm still not finished with my presentation. So let me just get through that, and then we'll get there. So, all right, as luck would have it, we are now at the Q&A section. So if you have a question, and this is from the old, you don't have to enter anything into the Q&A section because there isn't one, because you're standing right here. But I will do everything I can to make sure we have answers for every question tonight. If we do not, we will get back to you. We will be responding to all these questions on our website. We've already responded to a slew of questions on our website. We've already made several commitments on the project to our website to our riders as well. And if you are interested in this project and you have not already done so, I would encourage you to go to RIPTA.com/transit center. We have a spot in there where you can put your email address, and as this project is progressing, we're going to make sure that we're sending out regular emails to people so they know as this is moving along. So
thanks to everyone who has signed up to speak. Once we go through this list, if you still have a comment or question, raise your hand, we'll call on you. In the interest of everyone's time, please keep your comments on topic and no longer than 3 minutes. So let's start with Clarence Kettle.
Hi, Clarence.
How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I want to have food bus service, bus 27 from Sandale to South Supermarket on Springfield Road. And right now, we need to approve our bus service. Right now, in North Providence, bus 58 runs an hour. And it's unacceptable. It's no Sundays and holidays right now. And we've been asked for improvements for almost 5 years. And we haven't. I suggest bus 27 from Sandale. Supermarket back, so people can get off at Owensville Square. Maybe want to go to Market Basket or KFC. You got flexibility, or get off Owensville Square, that's plus 19. You can do it. You got Sundays and holidays. They run long hours. And we're always asking, you know.
Yep. Ed, do you know when we have tentatively got 58 scheduled to go to 7 day a week?
So I would say within a year, I spoke to Clarence earlier.
Yeah, this is on our short list, is we want to make 58 7-day a week. I know that doesn't answer your question about the
Because they
27.
built new stores on East Spring Ave.
Yep,
They got Wendy Keys up, we have no access to it at all. And so we have to complain about people, you know, I'm speaking for the residents of North Providence too, not just for me.
okay. Thank you, sir.
Barbara Henry?
Barbara. Hey, Barbara.
Hello, everyone. My name is Barbara Henry. You started your presentation stating that this was from a bond from 2014,
Yep.
and I think everyone in this room will agree with me. We didn't predict COVID. We didn't predict this horrific virus that has become a public. It is a reality. We're wearing our mask. It's a public health issue. And I'm listening to everything you're saying, and I'm very concerned. And I want to know, what has RIPTA learned since this pandemic? Have you been taking like notes and, because we're going to have another pandemic. This is not the last one.
So, yeah, I can speak generally about what we've learned. I'm curious, how does this relate? Are you asking specifically about how this relates to this project or just in general?
It's a public health issue,
Yes.
and we want to prevent viruses, illnesses from happening at your new location. So structurally, how are you going to build the buildings? How are you going to even improve the buses where we can, not have, for instance, let's say, I don't know, I'm just going to call it virus X. Virus X will come out next year.
Yep.
Or whenever the new building and structure things happen.
Yeah.
What has RIPTA learned through
Well,
this horrific?
I will say some of the things that we've already done. We've actually very early in the pandemic, and we've continued this. We've changed our cleaning regimen on our buses so that it's a lot more thorough. Buses are being cleaned a lot more regularly. We've invested in
Foggers.
I'm sorry, what's up?
We bought all the foggers.
The foggers, thank you, that was the word. We bought foggers, so every night our buses are essentially fogged with an antibacterial solution that essentially helps clean the buses as well. So even on nights when they're not getting the full cleaning, they are getting that. But it's been a really tough couple of years, absolutely. I think, as we move into development on the project, that's a great question.
And can I?
Yeah, please.
I just would like to ask you, you mentioned the amenities, the restrooms. Even before the pandemic, the restrooms would close at a very early time, and there was literally nowhere to use the restroom. And I just, I keep thinking of this horrific, what we've all endured, and also with public safety. I want to know why there isn't anyone here from law enforcement.
Well, this isn't a law, this is a RIPTA project.
I understand it's a RIPTA project, but it's a public health issue, so I feel that there's multiple layers.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah,
I'm
no,
more
it's,
concerned about my physical well-being and my safety than a coffee shop.
I get that. And yes, absolutely, I get that. This is still early. As I've said several times now, this is still a conceptual idea. If I had all the fine details worked out, I would be giving them. The reality is that as we move into development, this is a critical piece of feedback we need to hear. If it is more important that we focus on things like the health and safety aspect of it, we will make sure that that is going to be addressed through the design process. Do I have the answer at this moment to say these are the exact things we're doing? No, I'm not a public health expert, but we will certainly make sure that we are engaging the right people so that as we're doing this, we are keeping that in mind.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ruth Ann Lombardi?
My name's Ruth Ann, and what I'm curious about, I heard you mention it earlier, the 16. I was understanding that there was going to be a bus to market basket.
Yes. That's the
Is it-
16.
Is it still happening?
It is.
Okay,
It's happening. We had planned it initially to go all the way from CCRI down Bald Hill into the Market Basket, continuing down Route 2, opening up the ADA corridor to all the medical facilities on Route 2, cutting over to Quonset, and then going to URI. Because
okay.
of
So when's the 16 starting? That's the short story.
June. Yes, but it's going to be a shorter version for now because we don't have all the drivers we need to do it the full extent. So in June, it's just going to go to Quonset. But
Okay.
then we're hoping that by January, we're going to have all the drivers we need, and we're going to extend it all the way down to URI.
Okay, next question.
Yep.
It was my understanding the 29, that they're gonna be on the hourly, it's gonna be a different schedule?
Yeah, it's going to be, we're combining the 29 and 13 into one route to make it a little more efficient. Ed and Greg have a ton of information about that because they've been doing all the designing on that, and they can give you a lot more detailed answer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Janice Musco?
Hey, Janice.
James' question is, are they gonna be more accountable for people who are blind and deaf?
That's a fantastic question. You know, Robert, Janice, you guys are part of our ATAC.
Well, I can make them on the phone, make it easier.
We can, I think that's going to be,
On the real mail, so
Mhm.
why can, if people are deaf, so they can read on their phone?
so we can talk about how what steps we're going to take to make sure that this is
And
more
that's
accessible.
what people colorblind, they need a braille, you know.
Yes,
That's important.
yes, this is going to be, yes, I can't say that enough, that yes, we'll make sure that that's addressed.
My only other question is, safety and security. As it is now, right, you walk into the station now at Kennedy Plaza, and there, people are hanging around inside the bathroom, passing bags of whatever they have in it, and you go to the bathroom and you don't feel safe because I'm always looking over my shoulder.
Yep. So safety is a huge issue for us. I agree. And it's tough because this goes back to that weird dynamic of who's in charge of Kennedy Plaza. Is it the city? Is it RIPTA? Is it the Downtown Improvement District? It's confusing. And I think one thing that we're going to do in this project is we're going to be much clearer about what we own, what is our responsibility, and doing a better job of managing that because we don't have other competing interests that are taking away from that ability. So when those types of things are happening, we'll have a more active role in that. So I hear you for sure.
I have a question about that.
Sure, Janice.
My backpack.
Yep.
And I was in the bathroom, and one time, I was so lucky, I go in the middle, and the lady tried to put their hand inside my backpack and tried to steal something. And I couldn't, I caught it online, I turned around, and I got scared, because in the bathroom, kind of scary.
Yeah. No, I'm assuming as we get further into design on this project, bathroom design is going to be a whole crash course in like how to do it right because the bathrooms at KP are not great. I acknowledge that, yes, and we will work harder to make sure that that is a better experience.
Joseph Buchanan?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I just have a quick question.
Sir.
Number one, I don't want to see Kennedy Plaza moved. Number two, I don't think Carolina should be dictating what's going on because his mother goes to the hotel there. Number three is I think your bus drivers should be more respectful to the seniors and the handicapped, and they should be allowed enough use to move. The bus drivers don't do their job, they allow the young people to sit in the front while the handicapped and disabled have to get in the back, which is ridiculous. And you're talking about having improvements, you better improve your communications with the staff first. And they have to be more respectful because they know that they have people with mental illness. You know that some people might have the alcohol, so therefore, some of your drivers will create more trouble than the passengers. And for me, because I ride the bus each and every day, I see these things. And so when they're asking me to go along with RIPTA and some of their BS decisions, I don't believe so. I don't even believe that RIPTA likes people of color because a lot of times buses just drive right by them if they don't think they like people. So you got to check that out for yourself.
I appreciate the feedback, and my only advice would be that if you have an experience that you think is less than what you would have expected, I would encourage you to call our customer service line. We follow up with every driver complaint. When we get those complaints, we absolutely follow up with Transportation department, we do our best to identify the driver. If you have the bus number, if you have the time of day, the route you're on, we can usually identify pretty quickly who that driver was, and we do
Yeah,
follow up
that's
on
what you
those
want,
things.
that's what you're gonna get.
I hope so. Thank you.
Next we have Zan Berry.
I'm still collecting my thoughts back.
Okay, let's get
Thank you.
back. Grant Delgarian.
Grant, I thought I saw you here earlier. Grant, did you want to make a comment or have a question?
I want to apologize for having missed comments before.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Grant.
I want to apologize for having missed comments from previous speakers. I wanted to catch those.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll try to do a better job of repeating them when we hear them. I apologize.
So previous speakers have spoken already.
Yes, we've had a few questions. Yes.
Okay. No speaking.
And some comments, yes.
Comments? Okay. I thank you for having the actual presentation because when you're by phone, you can't exactly see slides. And you've heard my position before, and I will reiterate it, and that is I'm against the relocation of Kennedy Plaza. All roads lead to Kennedy Plaza. We're not changing the roads, so that's where they're going to belong. Now, you mentioned in the past that Kennedy Plaza is not RIPTA's, it's 3 provinces, and so you don't have control over it. But to me, that's an example of why people have a dim view of government. If one government agency and another government agency can't get together and work for the best for the folks, then that's pretty sad and unfortunate. I would like to see Kennedy Plaza be a very robust location, and it can be. There are more things that could go on in Kennedy Plaza than just the buses. As far as the buses are concerned, back before RIPTA decided to repave Washington Street and Fulton Street with orange pavement or whatever color that is called, it seemed to me that if we simply had east and west directions of bus traffic on Washington Street, and then east and west directions of all vehicular traffic on Fulton Street, that might be a step in the right direction. Because essentially you're flipping the bus stops on Fulton Street side of Kennedy Plaza to the inside part of Washington Street. So number one, it makes transferring closer for a lot of folks. Number two, it frees up Fulton Street for all traffic going in both directions. And number three, I think that it would be very, it would be so passenger-centric, and that I think everybody would be happy, including those folks who are property on Kennedy Plaza side of Fulton Street. And speaking of passenger-centric, the bus shelters that are on Kennedy Plaza don't do a lot of sheltering. And I'm very disappointed. They could be better. Now, a couple of things that could be better. Number one is on the roofs of the shelters, you put roof heaters. And they can be remotely controlled so that at 10, 11 o'clock at night, you can turn them on. That would be very nice and very helpful, especially during the months of November, December, January, February, March. Number two, we're under elements there. And, you know, we don't have to build structurally permanent facilities. Canopies. What happened to the idea of canopies that we could stretch from shelter to shelter? Easy, convenient, low cost, and be very much appreciated. I have other suggestions on route-specific recommendations, but I won't get into those now. One other thing, every so often, not every so often, frequently you'll see on the scrolls that are in the bus shelter, says no data. We know there's data out there, it's just not there. Now, why that can't be rectified, the next day, I don't know. But some of them say no data for days at a time. Makes no sense to me at all.
Well, if you see, those types of things, the reality is, there's yes, I hear you on the no data. That's a pet peeve of mine as well. I get very frustrated when I drive by or walk by a DTC station and I see that the feed is not working properly. If you see that, and you feel so inclined, let us know. The reality is that we are only so many eyes. We certainly, if we're missing something and it's not addressed, give us a call. Say, hey, I noticed that some of the signs at KP are out. We'll send somebody out, we'll get the IT team on it, and they'll fix them. And they're very good about that. So it just sometimes we don't see everything. So, thank you.
One last thing on IT. When you're inside the bus, and the announcement is arriving at a certain intersection or stop requested.
Yep.
Most buses, not all of them, most buses, the announcements are way too loud. But a handful are not, which means it's technically possible to tone down the volume. But bus drivers say, we have no control over it.
The bus drivers have no control over it.
Okay, so that's IT. And how come that can be controlled overnight so that it's
It can, and we do try to adjust that as we can, but you can't always predict the number of people that are on the bus or how loud the bus is going to be. So if you have an empty bus, it's going to seem a lot louder than if you have a bus full of people. Doesn't mean we can't do better. Does not mean that your comment is not taken seriously. You're just, it is a balancing act.
So you're saying there's a correlation between the population of the bus and the volume of the announcement?
I'm saying there is a correlation between the volume on the bus and the volume of the enunciator. Yes.
Check that.
Ken Orenstein?
Here.
Hey, Ken.
Hi. You know I've been involved with this since 1982.
I won't tell you when I was born.
But I won't go over all that. One failure of Kennedy Plaza was we stopped interlining buses after like 3. So with this new plan, interlining is critical because the one-seat ride was the mantra that every person who's ever worked for RIPTA has talked to me about.
Yep.
So I heard a mention of one line being interlined and changing the clock so that things can be done. So that's really critically important. I'm looking at my RIPTA Google app.
Mm-hmm.
Every single route that I would take longer to get to the train station than it is now. Because every route that comes through the East Side Tunnel would be routed to Memorial Boulevard rather than to Kennedy Plaza. So that it's longer, and then the R line, if it's 2 seats. So whether it's the 1 or whatever, I don't remember, I don't pay attention to numbers, I just know to go to the corner and get on the bus. So it would seem that the interconnection between one of the highest density RIPTA riders to the station, to Boston, so we're more integrated into the regional economy, which has been a mission of 2040. That seems to, and crossing over Exchange Street, the expansion of the train station was in part designed to accommodate buses that would be on an extended Exchange Street, and that seems to all have been lost.
So it has not. I hear you. So the interlining question, I think, I won't get too far in the weeds because it's probably interlining is just a tool we use. I don't like using it for every route all the time because it does have its limitations and boxes and the things. And I can certainly talk about that more offline. The question about the east side, this is actually a really great question. It's a tough one because If you think about all of our service on the east side, it essentially comes through the tunnel. Funnels through the tunnel, right? And so if you're going to the train station, there's really not a great way to get people there from the tunnel that doesn't involve some level of doubling back on yourself. So I will say, the routing we have shown up here is still conceptual, and we have flirted with a lot of different ideas over the years on how to improve that connection, including shoring the one, coming down Doyle and using it more locally along North Main Street to hit the train station similar to the R line, but then you lose Thayer Street. Which is critical. So we don't have the answer right now, but again, like this process is meant to be a starting point. This is not the last destination for this project. And so we certainly, yes, we need to improve that connection. And I think we're committed to making sure that as we're doing this, the dialogue is there to make sure that we're getting those solutions. Or if we can't, we're at least, again, crystal clear about why that is. But I hear you, and I don't disagree. So it's going to take work, that's all.
Ray Gagney?
Hi, Ray.
How are you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Good, thank you. This is the fourth hearing I've been to, and at each of the hearings, you talk about how you feel you're outgrowing Kennedy Plaza, and then also how you feel that Dorrance Street will be able to handle future traffic. So what data are you using to make those assertions?
So we've already modeled out, based on the Transit Forward Rhode Island 2040 plan, we've already modeled out what our transit service looks like in terms of bus volumes 20 years from now, right? So we have a sense of how frequent the one is going to be, how many buses per hour. We have some sense of, really for every single route, how frequent they're going to be, how many buses are coming into Kennedy Plaza at a given hour, and saying, okay, great, how much not Kennedy Plaza, into downtown Providence at a given hour. And so we're taking that information, we're essentially saying, okay, great, based on that best practices we know for how much time it requires a bus berth, how many bus berths do we need to accommodate that level of traffic? We're confident that with what we've shown here, that we can do that with 15 berths that we've got. This will tweak over time, because again, this is all still very conceptual. We do have the space to go up to like 18, 19 berths if we need to. We do anticipate that like some of the DTC stuff won't actually go into the plaza or into the center. It'll travel by, stop at this on street, and allow people to transfer in, which does mitigate some of that. But we are confident, based on the modeling we've done, that we've got enough space here to make that work.
Can you publish that data like on the website?
Yeah, we can make that available.
Because as a layperson, it just doesn't make sense to me that Dorrance Street can handle the traffic and Kennedy Plaza can't. So it'd be good to see the data.
Yeah, absolutely. I will add to that. And I know you've heard me say the reason I think Kennedy Plaza is sprawling, and I will spare you that now. One of the things that I have gone into a ton of detail about Kennedy Plaza is, within a best practice for transit, when you have the end of the line, you want to make sure that both ends of that line have break time for your driver. And it's to, number one, let the driver get out of his seat for a couple minutes, use the bathroom, get a drink of water, that kind of stuff. But then number two, and for the passenger's benefit, the benefit there is, if your bus is running late because of a bridge construction project in some part of the state that we have no control over, it gives that bus an opportunity to get caught back up. So it's when they get to that end destination, give them 5-10 minutes, they can get back on time, and the trip departs on time. We cannot do that in Kennedy Plaza today. Because it's active roadways, we have had to, essentially it's called layover time, we've had to strip all of that out of our system. And it's not good for our system, it's not good for our drivers, and it's not good for our passengers, because it creates a lot of uncertainty. And so one of the things that we're going to accomplish with this is, because we're off of city streets, we can add that back in. We've gotten to a point where we've had to trim that out of our system, because we have so many buses coming in and out of the plaza, and there's so much other traffic occurring that we can't have that layover time. And so we're confident that this will give us the space to do that layover time, so we can keep our buses running more efficiently and more on schedule.
Well, if you could publish that data, it would be appreciated.
Yep.
This comment won't surprise you, but we're still opposed to Dorrance Street.
I understand.
We still think the best investment is to fix Kennedy Plaza, and that's based on talking to like 1,000 people. They start from the premise that Kennedy Plaza works for them, and they just want to see some minor tweaks that I went over in the last hearing. Better bathrooms, reopen the ticket, get the kiosk back, maybe have the buses only going down Washington Street, better lighting, better security. That's what people want, and most of all, they want better service. And I think that's pretty much what you heard from the riders tonight. So thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you.
Randall Rose.
Hi, Randall.
So a couple of questions I have. I should say before I ask my questions, though, in my organization, the organization Rhode Island Transit Riders, which I'm one member of, we have been asking for recordings of the previous two meetings, and if you could also let us know about what was in the Zoom chat session. It's on the website, the links for the previous three meetings all goes to just one recording. There's no recording of the questions that were asked. And because there's been some interest in that, I wanted to raise that before I ask my questions.
So we only recorded the initial meeting, and as far as asking for the comments and questions, I can give you my card after this. I'm happy to email those to you. I have not received that request. And also the minutes from that meeting have been posted to the Secretary of State website, so they are available there as well, all three meetings.
Why did you not record the other two meetings, just as a question?
We generally don't record public meetings. We did it as an outreach effort, but generally most public meetings aren't recorded.
5 years ago, RIPTA did regularly record its board meetings. The quality of the minutes has gone down a lot since I started working on it.
And every city council and the State House records almost every meeting they have, and most other public bodies record their meetings as well.
And at last RIPTA board meeting, I asked that pass on her request was exactly from Terry Wright, saying that it would be good to televise these meetings and make them more accessible, and I did not hear a positive response.
This is the first that we're hearing of either of these responses from you, Randall.
I said this after most recent.
We'll talk
Can I go on to the
I'm sorry?
Can I go? Didn't mean that to mean anything.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. What's your comment or question?
Okay, yes. So I do feel like it's very clear there's a lot of people who are in favor of staying in Kennedy Plaza, a lot of people who are not convinced about Dorrance, and other people who are open to being convinced, and I count myself in the open to being convinced category. But I do feel that given all the uncertainties, this is not a time, it's pretty clear given all the uncertainties, this is not a time to commit to one option, and I don't like how things are being set up as if we're going to commit to Dorrance when things are so uncertain. In these presentations, I feel Kennedy Plaza is being downplayed and undersold, and Dorrance is being oversold somewhat. I'll just mention some of the most important points that haven't been brought up. First of all, one-seat rides, as Ken Ornstein mentioned. Moving from Kennedy Plaza to Dorrance means giving up a lot of one-seat rides. People know it's a fact.
No, it's not.
Over 60% of the people who get off at Kennedy Plaza are not transferring. They want to be in the Kennedy Plaza area. You've said it yourself. You said in a previous one of the previous three public meetings, you said that only a little over 30% of the people getting off at Kennedy Plaza have that as their final, are there to transfer. The remainder are there because they're not going. The remainder who are going into Kennedy Plaza, over 60%, are not going into Kennedy Plaza because they want to transfer to another bus. It's as far as bus travel is concerned, their final destination is Kennedy Plaza and the surrounding area. So I can point to you where you said it in one of the previous meetings.
I'm not doubting I said that, because you're right. I have said 1/3 of our passengers are transferring. What I'm doubting is that their final destination is Kennedy Plaza.
I was saying final destination.
I don't know how 60%.
If they're not transferring, then as far as buses are concerned, their final destination is Kennedy Plaza.
Yes, but dropping them off 2 blocks over might be more convenient for them.
Not 2 blocks over, it's 8.5 blocks from the center of Kennedy Plaza to the entrance right there. See that entrance on Clifford Street?
That's not where they're going.
Yeah, see the entrance on Clifford Street over on that picture?
That's not where they're...
That's 8.5 blocks from the center of Kennedy Plaza. I measured it. There's no way you...
Even if it is, there might be people that it's more convenient for. You don't know that.
I've given a cogent argument, and I trust that more than the generalities I've heard on the other side. But to go on a little further, so you've been saying that public-private partnerships are going to make Dorrance a lot better than Kennedy Plaza. Yeah, Kennedy Plaza is not a public-private partnership. Maybe some people want to turn it into one, but it's not one right now. With public-private partnership, I've heard the kinds of things you've said, that you want to require the developer to take care of, the kind of things you want to put on the shoulder of the developer. I don't believe you're going to be able to make a public-private partnership contract that favors all the things you want as smoothly as that. I think you're going to find, once the process has gone through, you'll be maneuvered into a contract, or you'll end up signing a contract that does not foresee all the things RIPTA is going to want. Maybe there'll be pressure to make the contract a little different than you would have wanted. It's not going to have the flexibility you have in Kennedy Plaza. But Kennedy Plaza, the worst you have at the other end is you have a political body, the city of Providence, that's elected and that responds to rider interest. And I believe that when you have been saying that the public-private partnership is going to ensure everything's going to be taken care of through RIPTA in a way that's much smoother than Kennedy Plaza. I don't think you have the experience to say that. This is not something that has been tried before, and all the planned renovations that have been advertised for Kennedy Plaza over the last dozen years that have been said are going to make things much better for transit, they've all ended up worse than advertised. So I think there are reasonable concerns, which is why I think we have to keep both options open. And I just want to put in a word for that. Thank you.
All right, thanks. And I will just respond by saying that you're correct. I've never done a private-public partnership on my own. Yes, I do not personally have that experience. This is not about the experience I have. This is about bringing in the right experience to actually help shepherd that process forward. This is actually a pretty well-established method of delivering capital projects nationally, actually internationally. It's a tried and true method on how to deliver a capital project and think about it in terms of the overall life cycle of that project. Part of our initial steps moving ahead are going to be bringing in the people who have the right expertise to do that. So there are law firms who structure these things all day long. This is what they do: is they structure public-private partnerships to ensure that the public is getting the benefit of it that they have anticipated. So this is so while I may not have personal experience doing this, that does not mean that there are other people who do not, and that doesn't mean that we're going to not consult them. So our next immediate steps are going to be bringing in that expertise so that we can structure this properly. Next question.
John Flaherty.
Hey, John.
Hello. Hi, my name is John Flaherty, and I've been a regular rider of RIPTA for about 9 years. When I use it, every ride takes me into Kennedy Plaza, so I have some experience with Kennedy Plaza. So I am actually looking forward to seeing an all-in-one full-service transit center as proposed with housing and retail. I'm personally convinced that that facility would be a significant improvement over existing conditions in Kennedy Plaza. The things that I'm interested in: the climate-controlled terminal space, sufficient bathrooms, retail amenities, having all the transfers take place in one location, and a space that can be adequately secured, because I don't think that that's the case with Kennedy Plaza today. I guess finally is really the dignity of a transit center that treats passengers more like you would expect to be treated at a train station or an airport. So I appreciate not only that, but also implementing the transit master plan and where transit goes. I do share some of the concerns that have been expressed by other people. And I think that it's important to point out that there's a lot of justified mistrust. I don't point to RIPTA for that, to be honest. Up until just a few months ago, this entire project has been handled by Rhode. And it hasn't been handled very well, in my opinion. There hasn't been anything close to this level of transparency. And when I think about other transit hubs, you mentioned the one in Pawtucket Central Falls at the train station, that's an example of one where I can understand why people are mistrustful, because that included elements that got value engineered out.
Yep.
I think that you all have taken some steps to secure money to restore those things, the actual passenger facilities, the bathrooms.
Yep.
So I think that most riders seem to have a lot more trust and confidence in RIPTA because that you engage with the public, you engage riders, and I appreciate, I mean, you said a few things in this presentation, frankly, that I wasn't expecting to hear this time. I didn't hear them previously, and those were commitments that you were making, and that was one of the things that I was going to ask about. And so, for example, you know, now this we don't have a commitment on yet. If you do, then please tell me. But I think most people would want to see RIPTA run this project and not RIDOC, and that hasn't, to my knowledge, has not been determined yet. That's one of the things that we'd like to see. And the reason is because you all have the knowledge and expertise in running a transit agency where RIDOC does not. You've already made a commitment multiple times to a robust public process. We're seeing that right here. And then I also heard you tonight commit to a rider advisory committee. I may not have the title.
It's a working title.
It's a working title. And it sounds like you have made a firm commitment to continued public engagement throughout the process, which is something that has been high on our list. That buses remain in Kennedy Plaza until a new facility is ready.
Yep.
To not have the disruption that occurred in 2015. And I think the one thing that is not, I haven't heard yet, and I don't think it can come from you, but it can come from the governor, and that is a commitment to build out this concept, in whatever form it ultimately takes, with all of the elements of it. And that's because we've seen on too many occasions where we get promised something and then it gets stripped out. And we haven't heard the governor say that yet, and I think that it would be, I would like to hear him make that commitment. That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you, John. And I just want to piggyback on that for just a second and say, yes, we are absolutely committing to things like the rider advisory and all of the amenities that we mentioned. Those are commitments that we're making. You know, at the end of the day, I know that this has been a process that has been a struggle for a lot of people because it's been going on for 8 years now, and I certainly can appreciate that there is a level of mistrust that is built up about the public sector's ability to deliver a good transit amenity for our passengers. I do think under this, you know, under the current conditions that we're working right now, that this is a positive step forward for our riders, and you know, we are committed to making sure that our riders' voices. We don't always have to agree, but we are always going to make sure that our riders' voices are heard throughout this process, and that we're doing our best to make sure that we're building a transit center that is reflective of all of our passengers' needs. I mean, that's what we strive to do. That's, you know, we get up every day to make transit better, not worse, I promise.
Jean DeBrito?
Hi, Jean.
I opposed to it being moved, but so you can be on the safe. And also I wanted to know, bus number 6 runs not that good, and I know on the weekends it doesn't run good either. And I wanted to know, is there any way to improve it to make it like 40 minutes instead of a whole hour?
So we have a whole slew of improvements for our system, including Route 6. I don't know where Route 6 fits into our timeline. I will say one thing that is, we're investing right now in a lot of our service. A lot of that's limited by the fact that we have a limited number of vehicles available. And we also, quite frankly, until we see some increased revenue from the state side, we're trying to expand service, but it's a little piecemeal right now. We're working towards making that a little bit more of a regular system of work where you'll see those improvements, but it is on our list of things that need to improve, is Route 6, and we acknowledge that.
Story. When I traveled on Harlem, the time I traveled on Harlem, stopped at Beaufort Park. I was going to go to College Street. Okay? But at that time, I think it was a year and a half ago, I took the bus and I was getting off over by Marion Hospital, over by Walgreens, and the bus driver told me it's not stopping at that time. So he brought me all the way down where Sears used to be on the opposite side. And he told me that's where the other stop was. And I said, why is it so far apart? It doesn't make sense to me. So I got off, went to the other side, had to come and take the bus going back the other way and get off over by Benny's, which that driver did let me off. And I had a doctor in the area of Marion, but not up the hill on the side. They had medical in the back of the nursing home. And another thing I didn't like about it either was I go into Collier Street, okay? I have to get off the R line, cross all the way through the street, go down, then go all the way down the hill to come to that medical building.
Yep.
Okay? The problem with that was too, I'm over by Job Lot, the bus that goes in there is Pawtucket.
Yep.
It doesn't go to Providence.
Yeah.
So now I gotta go all the way back around and take the R line and walk all the way up the hill, that's a disadvantage. That's too much. I think there needs to be a bus at least going to Providence, other than me having to take the Pawtucket, go all the way to Pawtucket, then have to take a bus from Pawtucket to Providence. That's inconvenient.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. So on the bus stop issue, we didn't take any bus stops out over there. So if that was recent, we can certainly look into why that would be the case.
I'm not maybe it was the one across from the they had taken it out. I'm still accustomed to it.
Which one?
It's who was near the Benny's automotive, like right between the, like you're saying.
Did it get removed?
Where the intersection is, and then you have to go all the way down like where the cemetery was, and the man just flew by me, and then somebody stops and says, "Oh, I'll test it with that." But there was no sign. But then the other day they put it back because I was on the bus and it's back there. Somebody had to have complained that it was
Yeah, we didn't.
addressed because the drivers had told me no, there's no stop.
So we didn't take the stop down. It must have gotten taken down either by an accident or someone. Sometimes their bus stop signs go missing. If that happens again, we generally, as a matter of practice, if we're going to remove a bus stop sign, we will put up a notice like a couple weeks beforehand saying this stop is going to be discontinued. If it comes down and that sign wasn't there, call us because that just means it's gone missing. We'll put it back up. But our drivers are trained that they don't stop at unmarked stops. So if they didn't get the message or whatever, they would. But that being said, if a stop goes missing and there was no sign up, call us. We'll look into it. Yeah, we didn't remove any stops over there. So, yeah, but in the future, if that happens again, I'm sorry it happened, but please call us because our service planning team they will get out there and address that.
I wasn't done, I'm sorry, but I know.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
I was in the same area.
Yeah.
I was in the same area, like I said.
Yep.
I want to know, is there going to be another bus going to Providence from Job Lot, or you have to walk up the hill, go around and do all that? I don't think that's.
We don't have plans for them right now, but I would encourage you afterwards, talk to Ed and Greg who are sitting right next to you. We can certainly look into that.
Cliff Wood?
Hey, Cliff.
Thanks for the time. Cliff Wood from the Providence Foundation, and we took a leadership role with our friends at Grossmart in 2014 to get the first $35 million for this transit bond. Our organization is about 50 years old. We have many decades of history supporting both public space improvements and transit improvements. This is one of many issues that we've got involved with to support transit. The initial reason we wanted to do that was to do those two things, support public space, support improved transit. We think both of those things are critical to the economic and social well-being of the city. And in that, we had some requirements that all these proposals, wherever they came from, they met those criteria. Heretofore, none of them have, so we hadn't supported them. And we're recognizing the very good work that you guys have done at RIPTA and having the control to do this. You've done a wonderful job. I know it's really difficult. All the needs that folks have, their individual needs. It's a statewide entity, and I really respect the time and energy that you spend and that everyone else has spent with you trying to make this thing happen. But we support this project. We support it for two reasons. Like I mentioned, it improves public space and it improves transit. If you go any place in the world, you'll find many facilities that have transit that treats people well, that is attractive, that has bathrooms that work, that has security, that has programming that supports the well-being of the facility, not just for the first 2 years after it's built, but in perpetuity. And the third thing that we wanted to see this project happen, besides improving public space and improving transit, was to have some mechanism for it to be cared for. I've been working downtown in one job or another for 24 years, often with or adjacent to government. And the number of times that you've gone to a ribbon cutting and clapped, and then 2 years, 3 years later, you're scrambling, trying to figure out how to make this thing work the way it's supposed to work. It's just no way to run anything, let alone a multi-million-dollar facility that so many people rely on currently, and then if we do it right, many more will rely on in the future. So this proposal, as opposed to previous proposals, is improving public space, will improve transit, will give dignity to the transit rider, will attract transit riders, and will keep itself maintained. If it doesn't do those things, we won't support this project in the same way that we didn't support previous projects. But we believe that this is doing that. It's been a long time coming. This is why many of the people that helped us get that money in the first place are supporting this project. GrowSmart, AARP, many others who've testified in the last 2 or 3 meetings that you've had. I just wanted to come and let everybody know that we are not playing. They're not playing either. This has to be right, and we believe that this will be right. So I thank you for your time and everyone for taking the time to come out in the cold. Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff.
Nick DiCristofaro.
Hi, Nick.
You know what, I'm just going by.
I didn't know I signed this, but I've been a bus driver for about 44 years. And I thank you all for coming to this meeting. I think it's a very important meeting. I think that if, like Greg was saying, if he can deliver what they're proposing, I think it's a good thing. There is some things that I would question, but I don't think this is the time, since it's just more or less just taken off. There's many ideas that we're going to have to put together as we go along. I'm hoping that there is going to be a lot of listening and a lot of talking from all sides. Riders and, of course, the working gears. Which, when I say that, I mean the actual drivers and mechanics and everyone that makes RIPTA run. So I believe in this project. At first, I had my doubts. I gotta admit, I had my doubts because Kennedy Plaza's been out of transit for, well, I'm not a young guy, but before me. So Kennedy Plaza's been there from
1847.
There you go, exactly. This isn't far from it, it's only a few blocks. Hopefully we can see how this project is moving along periodically, not just in 4 meetings, but as we go on. And I hope that you all play a part in it, because it takes us all to make it work, correct? It's one-sided, and there's many sides to this. So I'm going to leave it at that for now, but I will be paying attention as I normally do. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick. So, I'm sorry?
Oh, my God, hands up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so I think that was the list of people who signed up to speak. I know Zen, you were still going over. I'm gonna open it up to other people. If you wanna comment, raise your hand. I saw your hand first, ma'am.
Please state your name also for the record.
Yes, my name is Terry Wright. I'm the organizer at DARE and also a community member and a lifetime RIPTA rider. I just want to really keep the focus. Mobility Justice is meeting RIPTA transit riders where they are and providing a service that will not displace BIPOC and marginalized lower income communities that solely depend on RIPTA as a means of transportation, going to and from their destinations, just like housing is health, transportation and how we move around in our everyday lives is health. Let's not lose focus. Are we building are you building? For the city or for the people?
I can tell you right now that our first priority is our passengers. Absolutely. And I will be the first to admit, we do not always get it right. But that's not because of lack of trying, and that is certainly not because we are not interested in serving our passengers. I'll just say from a personal level, I can't speak for everybody, but I think this is a pretty ingrained culture at RIPTA, that we do genuinely care about getting people connected to where they need to go. That is what we do. And this is a process where I'm hopeful that we can address some of the issues that have, number one, been created through this murky process up to this point, but also address some of the systemic issues that we've been a part of. I think this is an opportunity to get it right. I'm certainly, the words you said about meeting riders where they are, I realize we're sitting in a room right now in downtown Providence. This is not the last step for us. You know, I'll tell you right now, I've been paying attention to different groups that are coming to these meetings, and I'm already starting to meet with like Matthews and Street Church next week. I'm meeting with some. We're doing our best to make sure that we're hearing as many voices as possible. If you are aware of people that we need to be talking to, please let us know, because we'll do it. That's part of the process for us.
Just one more question. Is there any chance of Providence getting 2 years free bus service?
That's a good question. I don't have an answer for it. But I hear you.
The answer should be yes. And the reason I say that is, as you talk about this $1 billion, when it's all said and done, investment, and somehow there's no need to make sure the ordinary passenger is not faced with the sudden and persistent burden of transportation costs out of pocket.
Yep.
I mean, I'm just saying, those just go together.
I hear you.
can't ask people to be one, blind faith, and in the meantime, nothing really specific is happening around routes. I mean, they're getting better by far, but I'm just saying this is trust me here, but I have an excuse for pretty much anything that's directly measurable, impactful to today's passengers, other than trust me.
Well, that's a fair point. That's a fair point, Michelle. I'm not standing here saying trust me blindly. I'm saying that we are making investment in our service, and I can go through a whole list of improvements we've made in the past 2 years.
It's paying great benefits.
It is.
For nickels compared to this.
But there is a difference. There is a difference between. Unfortunately, I hear the free fare question. The reality is RIPTA generates $26 million a year in fares. That's about a quarter of our operating budget. So if we were to lose that without having something in place to make that whole, that's a quarter of our service that disappears.
No one is asking. I don't think that's how the question was presented.
Right.
I'm saying you guys have prioritized to the tune of millions and millions and millions of dollars in tax money.
Yep.
Infrastructure.
Yep.
The same passion and 8 years that you've taken to get to this point, I don't understand why we can't do the same thing in 8 to 10 months on the flip side, which is how are we cultivating ridership today, now, with the assets that we do have in hand? Because when this is all said and done, this money is going upstream. Nobody from our neighborhood or our community will be the operator. They may not even get a job in this so-called private partnership P3, because we understand it's a very elite universe, and it immediately is mystified. We won't even know who the real owner is at the end of the day. It'll be a limited partner, limited. We know you guys.
Yep.
You guys get screwed, we're screwed.
I hear your point. I don't have a better answer other than, and I'm not saying trust me, but I am saying this isn't personal to me on any level. But I am saying that we are committed to a process to making sure that we're doing our best to make sure that our passengers' voices are heard in this process, and that has not been done to date. And we're aware of that, and that is well-earned skepticism that you have about this process. I can just tell you that things are different. The fact that we're standing here in this room in this moment is a direct reflection of the fact that we are listening to our passengers. We started this with, we were going to do 3 meetings virtually. We weren't even, previously there weren't even meetings. And we're standing here and, you know, and I'm not trying to pat ourselves on the back, but I am trying to say, we are listening.
Right.
And so.
And I'm saying, in so doing it, because you are the only ones we can rely on.
Yep.
We need to push you guys a little bit towards the edge of this safe haven that you're in.
Yep.
To understand that everything you do now in the context of tax investment, taxpayers' money, it cannot only go upstream. It cannot only go a little bit to you guys and the rest goes to the big guys. We're losing Kennedy Plaza, not because, I mean, if I go to your slide deck, which I have, I think there's probably 4 things on that slide deck that you would not do in a Kennedy Plaza improvement plan. Only 4 things. Everything else in there you would be doing, because you've done them before. Bathrooms, you name it, the list goes on, lighting. So when I try to compare apples to apples, what are the 5 or 6 salient things that are different about Dorrance, aside from the money?
Yep.
And what you would do in a traditional Kennedy private 25-year plan of improvement. It's clearly infrastructure for you guys. That's the biggest thing.
Yes.
But other than, so let's give you that. But at the end of the day, in order for us to be able to not worry about being left behind, it's got to constantly speak of it. Speak of the, you know, the broader picture.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. And I think we clearly have work to do there. And we're gonna do that work. And you know, I know you and I are meeting, I think next week, or end of this week actually.
Thursday. Friday.
Friday. So let's, I mean, this is important and I hear you. And we will work. I hear what you're saying, that this has got to work for not just our passengers at the service level, but systemically, this has got to work differently, and I hear that.
I have a question after you win.
There's a bunch of questions. I want to make sure we're getting everybody here.
Yeah, no,
I saw this gentleman over here always.
Hi, Greg.
Hi.
I will begin from, I have been a writer for 15 years. 15 years that just this section has been completed to its totality, which I am now enjoying, that I can easily go to my doctor's appointment up the street at the hospital if I need to. So my question is, I support everything that is going on here because as a person with a disability of CP that is now have to rely on my own vehicle that took a year and a few months before COVID started, that I now see the world in a different view. So my point is, I know you said housing. Is that housing going to be affordable for people like me?
No income.
That if this is completed, could eliminate one bus route for me. Because currently, I take the 72 to get to Kennedy Plaza, and whatever route I need to take. So, if the housing is affordable, that would mean I could help the state economy, like you were saying, to help the state economy.
Yeah.
Is it going to be affordable? If you say it's going to be Providence affordable, which currently it is not, and if we look at the numbers that current buildings are leasing at, I'm being totally transparent here. The numbers are out of my budget.
Yep.
I just asked, it has to be affordable.
Low income. They try some low income units in there.
It has to be affordable so someone like me can not have to worry about how the heck I'm going to get home. Like, I feel safer in the city of Providence. Why? Because the streets are paved. Everything is paved. I am thankful that the city of Pawtucket is getting its new bus hub, which I will be enjoying in January when all these new routes are supposed to be online for the new bus hub. I will be enjoying that until this is completed. But we also have to see the bigger picture. I wanna help the state economy in any which way I can. So, if these housing is available at an affordable rate, maybe I could. My dream is eliminate one bus route.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. So I'm going to be totally clear about the housing piece. I know in the previous, the only change to this has been we've gotten rid of the word workforce because we actually got a fair amount of criticism. And we're transit people. We talk about buses all day. Housing is not our specialty.
And I
So
understand that.
So we're already engaging Rhode Island Housing. I'm meeting with Crossroads next week, specifically to start to talk about those types of issues. But housing is very much on the front of our mind that this is an area where we need to get up to speed and get current with this. But yes, the intention is that this is going to be, that there will be affordable housing as part of this project. So that is.
Affordable housing is affordable. We need some low-income housing.
I hear you.
Because affordable housing is not affordable, so don't give me that crap that you're trying to pull off. That's not gonna work.
Debbie Garrett.
All right, next question, Dwayne.
All right, so you mentioned that the bond money that we have is not gonna pay for this whole entire project.
Correct.
What is the total estimated cost of this?
Right now, we have estimates at about $100 million for the project in total. Admittedly, that does not include things like full electrification, so that is something, if we add, is going to increase in cost. Based on the research we've done on P3, it is not an unreasonable ask that would be privately subsidized or financed.
Okay, and then to follow up on that, in all these possibilities, because there is still uncertainty, not
Yep.
sure of, there's nothing confirmed. Is your decision-making process going to be one in which you're going to answer those questions and all those uncertainties first before you take any action? Or is it that you're going to be taking action and as these questions arise, you'll make the decision then, whenever you know, and we have to dig into this conversation?
So is your question, are we going to basically act and then say, here's what we're doing? Well, I think
Try to answer those questions really is best as you can of an answer before.
I think the broader questions of how this project is going to shape out is going to be a pretty open process. And that is, as I've said and committed, we're going to have some sort of rider advisory panel informing this project. But when you get into the nuts and bolts of like, are the bathrooms going to be tan or gray? Are we going to go out and skip public input on gray bathrooms versus tan? Probably not. But there is going to be a level here where there is going to be a lot of engagement with the public to make sure that we're getting the broader structure and picture of this correct. And we're going to be doing that. Again, we're taking this feedback very seriously. We've already committed to things we've heard from the previous 3 meetings. And we're going to continue to do that. Like, this is not a let's make decisions and pull a fast one and see what we can get away with.
Well, it kind of feels that way because even to the question of the partnership, who is that partner? Who is that person? Where are those additional costs? And then we're talking about with this investment, obviously there's a profit that they are anticipating to get.
Absolutely.
Investment. So that goes to answer their questions. What type of housing we're going to have? What income ranges or asset levels are going to be delivered to? When we talk about the amenities, who's going to be able to afford the leases and the rents there? And will it be affordable or within the budget of those who ride the bus?
So
really going to be for them.
So let me be clear about the public-private partnership and sort of how that works. This is not a, hey, developer, here's a bunch of money, give us a transit center, and when you're done, we'll gladly take control of it. And oh, by the way, there's some housing, figure out. That's not how this works. This is a very prescribed process by which we are going to get into a very granular level of detail in the procurement, where we're going to say, this is what your housing looks like. This is the mix of income levels that need to support that housing. And they basically, it's a back and forth, and they'll say, great, we can do that, but here's where we might want some give, here's where we might need you guys to, and it's not a like one and done and they just give us a proposal. There is an actual dialogue that's occurring in that procurement. Can I tell you which developer it's going to be? Absolutely not, because it's not determined, because it has to go through a public procurement process. We can't just pick developer X and say, here's $35 million of taxpayer dollars, build us something. Like there is a long process. And again, we want the riders at the table as part of that process. So as part of this rider advisory panel, and we're going to come up with a better name. But as part of this rider advisory panel, that they will have the ability to be involved in these decisions before they're getting made, giving us the reality checks of, okay, wait, this does not work, we need to do a better job there. That is the intent of this process.
Correct.
All right, so we are unfortunately running out of time. I got time for a couple more quickish questions because it
My
is.
question's real quick.
Sir, back in the corner.
I think this is important. My name is Rick. Throughout this process, we haven't heard much how these proposed changes in the downtown are going to affect our student population here in Providence. If it's going to guarantee their more safety, a short-term, long-term plan so that they're able to afford these transportation costs. I understand there's a plan right now set in stone with student population here in Providence receiving free transportation, if I'm mistaken.
Providence School subsidizes transportation for their students.
Right. So I was just wondering, in general, this proposed change in downtown, how will it affect our students who end up waiting around Kennedy Plaza?
Well, I think that's a great question, and that's actually, again, it gets into the details of having a space that's manageable. Right now, we do provide a lot of busing for Providence School students, and we've all seen or heard about, there's another fight in the plaza, blah blah blah. Part of the issue there is that, again, it goes back to, we don't have control of that site. We are a tenant in Kennedy Plaza. We are not the owners of Kennedy Plaza, and so we have not had really a great way to manage that space. And I think this is an opportunity for us to again rethink from the ground floor. How are we rethinking? How are we addressing that? I think it's something we need to keep in mind. I don't have a like this is exactly what's going to happen on day one. But it is something that we're hyper aware of that needs to be addressed in the management of the space. So.
I just want to say, I appreciate it takes a lot of courage to be able to come in front of a public audience and be able to speak and to be able to lay out the floor plan of what's happening. But I don't want any, like this man that just left. I had a question for Mr. Cliff himself, because I feel that there's a major influence coming from the Providence Foundation, the Rhode Island Foundation, the Marceline Group, the Palino Group. I feel like this whole circle around Kennedy Plaza is making the move. I believe that if you can't secure Kennedy Plaza, what makes you think you can secure this place? If you cannot put the people in a safe environment in front of a big open area like Kennedy Plaza, police station across the street, you got these buildings that look down, you got the State House, you got the Capitol Enforcement, you got the Amtrak police, you have all these people that are still overdosing in your community right there in front of you. If you are still not, if you're doing it now, what makes you think that you can spend $100 million of taxpayers' money at the height of the real estate economy? Why are we spending that much money
So I can answer your question.
to build the building, to build the building during the height of the real estate market? We're talking,
we're running out of time.
The cost to build this property is going to take everybody out of the price rate. Everybody that's sitting here will not be able to afford those condos inside because it's going to cost $100 million to build it.
All right, so we are running out of time. Can I answer your question?
But I'm almost.
All right, sir.
So this happened in 2004. We got the RFP, we got the grant in 2004, and it's now. So we waited to do this great building on Dorrance Street, or wherever this is going to go, wherever you want to put this place. You spent 17 years putting this plan together, and then all of a sudden, you roll it out right when the friggin' checks are ready to get printed? Come on, this cannot be happening to these people.
Can I answer your question?
2014.
And now it's only when the multi-hall plan has failed that's when they're all of a sudden this plan.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and answer your question. So first of all, the bond was passed in 2014, not 2004. Second of all, up until this point, RIPTA has not been in charge or been empowered to actually speak to our passengers about the project. So that has been a bigger issue. Now, about the real estate question and whether or not people are.
Why are you buying $1 million property?
Well, you're not buying $1 million. You're not buying $100 million. Again, this is private investment that is going to help subsidize this.
Well, why now?
Why now? Because we have the money to spend on a project and our system is growing.
There's no sustainability. You said that 1/4 of the money that we receive from RIPTA is actually enough to run the business. You don't even have bus drivers. I
All right,
drive by Elton
so-
every day.
so let me-
You can't even find employees. Who's gonna ride these buses that you're expecting to make this
So-
money from?
all right.
I'm trying to figure it out.
Sorry, so you brought up a whole bunch of partners that you think are dropping the ball in Kennedy Plaza, Providence Police, Amtrak Police. All these groups that you're saying where are they? Where are they? They're not here.
They don't need to be here. This is a RIPTA presentation.
Yes, but we don't own
You should
Kennedy.
have invited them and said, these are going to be our partners on this hub.
But sir-
We have brought these in to.
Steve, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Real quick. You talk about public-private partnerships. I'm a little worried about those because they don't always work, like you're saying. Across the country, they have failed.
Yep.
People have bought back their water systems. Think about the medical appointment transportation debacle that happened here when it was pulled out of RIPTA's hands, right? That was privatized and immediately went to crap. We didn't adopt them seriously in Rhode Island because by the time we started seriously thinking about them, we already had a litany of failure from around the world. And we had some of the biggest companies that do private P3s in the world here at the State House 6 years ago. And those meetings were canceled after a while and it went nowhere because people were bringing up objections and showing how poor they are. They almost never work. And if you're talking about housing, they're never going to agree to make affordable housing. You're going to be valued out of that immediately. They're not going to do a bunch of stuff because no one wants to. P3s have to make a profit on everything but what you do. And if you're making affordable housing, you're not going to make a profit on it, and so they won't do it.
Okay.
So I have serious concerns about that, and I would hope we have an alternative.
Well, I mean, you're saying that every private-public partnership has been a failure. And that's
No,
just,
I'm saying that most ultimately get.
most of them are not failures. They're not. It's just there have been failures, absolutely. And is this a 100% done, going to be perfect? Let's write the check tomorrow. No.
Right.
But there is a project development process.
One of the
that we will
reasons
go
that
through.
they don't work too is because these companies have lawyers who all they do is P3s.
And that's what we will have.
And then you will have a company that will do something like P3s in a local way, but
No.
not the international expertise that these
No,
people
there's-
will bring to bear.
Again, you're making an assumption there.
I know how that is worked that way across the country.
You're making an assumption that we're not going to bring in. Okay. I mean, that is again, that's just. I mean, that's your opinion, but that's
Well,
not.
it's also backed by lots and lots of
It
facts.
sounds like he's challenging the fact that you're making an assumption that there
Right.
is a group of people out there that are trustworthy, competent, visionary, whatever you're looking for in your RFP.
There are.
And I'm saying that I think we just happen, in the world of developers, like myself, we understand that list is very short.
Yep.
And there's a lot of competition for that list.
Yes.
Every city and town out here is trying to do the same thing.
Yes.
So I think to some extent, there's a little bit of skepticism as to whether or not you'll be able to achieve your goal.
Right.
I mean, we've been privatized before.
No, I hear
It didn't
that.
work.
Well, let me be clear. This is not privatizing RIPTA. This is not a building that's going to be owned by.
Private partnerships, you know.
There is a private element to this, but it is not privatizing RIPTA.
Well,
It is-
allow me to say though that P3s were marketed as a replacement for the word privatization. This is the history of
because
this is what
RIPTA's-
they are.
RIPTA will own the building.
P3s are in fact privatization. Even if it looks like a public-private partnership, the parts of it are privatized. It's a public-private. Honestly, private should be first, but we put public first because it sounds better. But all P3s are really just privatization under a new term. This is historically true, not an opinion.
All right, we got to wrap it up because we're going to lose the space here, but I appreciate everyone's.
Bring back, on hot days, the summer's coming, free ozone bus rides? Why did you take that away?
That was the grant funding for that was
Can we bring it back?
I don't know.